All right, looks like hello everyone. Looks like we're just in time for the finance committee meeting.
Hi, Will.
Hi
Hi, Neil.
Susan. Hi Neil. And I see Director Turi is there. So since the time is 5:30 and I see Director Turi is there. So I'm gonna call the Edmond City Council Finance Committee meeting to order on September the 12th at 5:30 p.m. In attendance, we have Finance Director Turi, we have Council President Neil Tibbet and Council Member Susan Payne, and also we have Council Member Vivian in attendance. Hi, and I want to thank Scott Passy for running our Zoom and for people who are listening. I want to thank you for taking the time out to join us. I see Councilmember Jenna Ning just popped in. So tonight on our agenda, we have council committee update. I have one items that's listed, and then I'll just open it up for Director Tully to provide any updates that he can provide it to us. But I want to walk through the internal control uh, just as an introduction. Um, let's see, how can I share the screen? Okay, can somebody give me a cue that you can see my screen? Can you see the screen,
Mhm.
Susan?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
All right. So just briefly to walk through the standards for internal control for government. This is referred to as a green book, and it can be suitable for federal government and local government as well. And what it is a set of framework that government can adopt and implement at their specific level to strengthen and improve the government entities' internal control. Just high level, what is internal control? Basically, internal control is a set of processes that's used by the management to help achieve its objectives. And different entity have different objectives. In the slides that's coming up, I'm gonna identify what what I think our objective should be. And of course, we can discuss that. So for us, City of Edmonds, I think internal control can help us run our operations more efficiently and effectively. And also it will help us to report reliable financial information that's reflecting the operations of our city. And in addition, it will help us comply with applicable laws and regulations, such as we just had 2021, the APA audit, which was a requirement that we just went through. So those are the key objectives that internal control can help us. And how does the framework uh, come into play when we implement our internal controls? Basically, the Green Book is also referred to as standards for internal controls in federal and local government. It's a set of framework and guidance to set internal control standards for the federal and local entity. basically it's a guidebook for local government to follow and adapt. So how can we use the Green Book? We can use the Green Book, basically the standards, to help us identify our objectives, the objectives that I just went through. And it can help us design the specific controls that we want to implement, and then finally we deploy our resources to have certain controls in place. Different controls can strengthen certain operations and make it more effective. Also reporting, information reporting, and such. And through those controls, if we place it in place and implement it on a regular basis, and hopefully it will help us achieve the objectives that are set forward to accomplish as a city. So again, just kind of recap the objectives. As a city, it can help us strengthen our operations more effectively and efficiently. It will help us with our financial reporting, report financial information that reflects our operations as a city. And in addition, it will help us comply with laws and regulations. These are a few components of internal controls. Basically, we start with assessing the control environment, looking at the big environment as a whole. For us, is the city, and then assess the risk. What kind of risk as a city we are facing, and then implement control activities. I just list a couple of examples that we could use certain control activities to help us strengthen our reporting, our compliance with laws and regulations. For example, we had went through the 2021 APA audit, and we also went through the July budget amendments. There were some corrections were made. And perhaps we can have certain control in place to review and approve some of those professional services that we are using. I'm just using a few examples here. And additional components of internal control, of course, very importantly, is information and communication. This is very critical. We can have the best control in place, but if we are not communicating from the hierarchy of the operations, from the mayor to city council to employees, then it just doesn't utilize the potentials of those control in place. And finally, internal control is a ongoing process. It requires constant monitoring and improving. And just like Six Sigma is an ongoing process. So who can use the Green Book? Basically, from our mayor to department heads, everybody who has a decision-making capacity, finance directors for financial reporting. For us, the city councils, we can use this framework for our oversight. Use that as oversight tools and review policy and procedures. And then another reporting and compliances can also use this as a guidance. So this is the resources by state auditor's office on their website. That's the link to Washington State auditor's website. So they actually, when they perform the audit, they also refer to this as a guidance as well. So that's on the high level, it's introductions. I know currently our city is facing budgeting and many other urgent issues. So I'm just gonna put this on the horizons, and maybe in the future we can return and revisit. So I'm gonna open it up for discussions.
Thank you for presenting this, Will. Got a few questions for you. We hadn't talked at all about adding this to the agenda, but so it's interesting to see this. So further back in your PowerPoint, you ended up having a discussion point about contractors and professional service contract providers and have those evaluations. What were you thinking about with those sort of items? Because the other one was pretty specific, so I imagine that there's some specifics with this one as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, when we look at this year's our professional services is takes up to about 20% of our spending, so it's very significant. So I think it would be reasonable for us to think about, did we get what we start out to hire those professional services to do? Did we achieve what we pay them to do for? So that's I just use that as an example. And currently, to my knowledge, we don't have any procedures in evaluating contractors.
So, okay. So are you thinking that there's some providers that aren't meeting the mark, or and then or how do you think that the Green Book would be used if we decided that we needed it, that we would be implementing that piece? Because we do use a lot of contractors. I mean, almost all of our public works come out of contracting.
Exactly. So those Pacific additional control in place will take us, like I say, it will take many resources to implement, to adapt. It probably will take $250,000 to come up with something. So what I provide is for free. It's just an introduction.
All right. So, all right. I imagine we have internal controls. We've been a city for just over a century.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Director Turley, do you have anything to add?
No, I think it's a good idea. I look forward to working with you on it. We've said several times we need to continually update our policies at the city. There's several policies that we're kind of lacking in as far as formal written policies. And I do agree with you completely that that's something we definitely need to work on. So I'd like to put it on the agenda to work on it with you over the next future, next year,
Okay, yeah.
whatever. Upcoming agendas, sure.
Wonderful. So I know well right now we're busy with the budget and also the other things that's kind of urgent that we need to take care of. So we'll perhaps in 2024 we can reintroduce this idea and look at specific control that we can put in place.
Sure. Hey, Scott, can you promote Kim? I think Kim Dunscombe is out there. I think her name just says Kim.
Will, if you're done with the
She's there
slides,
now.
you could remove that and we can see people better.
Okay, so let me. Screen sharing has stopped. Okay. Is that better?
Yes.
Hi,
Hi,
Kim.
everyone.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes, of course. Very honored to be here. Thank you.
This is Kim Dunscombe, new Deputy Finance Director, Administrative Services Director. We're very happy to have her here. She's been here about a week now.
All right, welcome on board.
She's really hit the ground
Welcome,
running. So,
Kim.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Very honored
Finally.
to be
Yeah,
here.
want to make
congratulations.
sure everybody had a chance to meet her.
Thank you, Dave.
Great.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Nice
Um,
to meet you.
Thank you.
So introduce yourselves to us.
Oh, sure. Okay, so my name is Kim. Very honored to be here this evening. Thank you. Taking on this pivotal role as the Deputy Director of Administrative Services. I have over 2 decades working as a dedicated server to financial services industry. My most applicable experience was working for the city of Bainbridge Island. My journey there allowed me to rise through the ranks and ultimately work as the city's budget and revenue manager. And so while I was there, just dedicated to unwavering commitment to fiscal responsibility and prudent financial management. And I really look forward to providing my knowledge and my passion for public service to the Edmonds community.
Thank you very
Wonderful.
much.
Thank you and welcome
Welcome.
again.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So why don't we go around and quickly just introduce ourselves? So my name is Will Chen. I'm the second year council member. This year I'm the finance committee chair.
I'm Susan Payne, part of the Finance Committee, and I was, this is my 4th year on City Council, and welcome aboard. Nice to see another long-term public servant. Before I retired from work, I have about 28 years with the public sector.
Okay, Vivian.
I'm Vivian Olson. I'm not an official member of this committee, but I'm just here to listen and learn. And it's really nice to meet you. We're thrilled you're here.
Thank
Council
you.
member Nang.
Hi, it's very nice to meet you. I'm kind of the new kid on the block with the council. I'm the most recent person to join. So yeah, I think it's a great work environment, and I hope that you find it enriching professionally and personally to work with the city.
Great. Thank you. New kids.
Council President.
Yes. Good evening, Kim. My name is Neil Tibbet, and I am serving now in my 2nd term on the council. And you got here in the nick of time. So thank you.
Finance staff is definitely busy, so I'm really happy to just jump on in and start learning.
I think it's a really interesting department, and I'm glad that you're bringing your expertise.
Thank you. It's very nice to meet everyone.
Now Director Turley can take up and play some golf, right?
No?
Ride his motorcycle.
Okay, so let's continue with the item. So I'm done with introducing internal control. Director Turley and Deputy Director, do you have anything else to update us? In terms of this council agenda item.
Not at this time, no.
All right. Let's move on to
No questions
comment-
from me, Will.
all right. Thank you for letting me know.
Uh-huh, yeah.
So let's move on to our committee business 2.2, which is July's financial report. I see the set of reports was provided in the packet. I just have a couple of questions, but I will let Councilmember Payne go ahead if you
No,
have
no
any
questions.
questions first.
No, not at all. This is from July, and it looks like everything is about on course. I'm really looking forward to what we're going to be getting up into in the next couple of days. So thank you. No questions from me.
Okay. Yeah, so Director Turley, I looked through the report. Most of them are ordinary business. I just have a couple of questions. I also sent you an email about that. And on the cash investment portfolio summary, I come back to this month after month. Looking at the investment to the Snohomish County investment pool, they still have a 2.26% return, yet we have over $33 million in that pool. And the higher return is the state pool, give us 5.24% interest return, but yeah, we have less investment in that pool. So I'm just constantly thinking we're leaving money on the table. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, so I can't give you any more information than I've given. I've answered this question at least half a dozen times now.
Right.
What I want you to tell me, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to contact the county and take all our money out of the county pool? Is that what you want me to do,
Wait a minute.
please? I don't have
Yeah, I
any
mean,
any information that I haven't already given you. So where can we go from here? I need to know what you would like me to do.
So if both pool are on demand, that meaning if we need the money to pay wages, we can pull the money out.
They're not both on demand. I never said that. I've explained before, the Washington State pool is a demand pool. The county pool is not.
Okay. The other day, when we were discussing this with Councilmember Payne, I think the information was the opposite.
No, what you mean on Monday?
Correct.
No, it's always been this way. And so I was surprised that this came back up again. I don't object. I think the question I would ask about this specifically is how long is the term? How long does it take to get it out of Snohomish County, and how much notice do they need? And are we using these funds as where we go to pay our payroll on a month-to-month basis, or do we leave that in our regular bank account? I mean, I think those are some of the comments that were coming through with our meeting yesterday with the other folks on the sort of community team. But so I think those are the questions that came up at that meeting. I understood what was just told to us by Director Turley to be what I understood.
Okay, so let's say I 100% believe Director Turley say about the demand and unknown on demand. Probably the documentation here need to be updated to reflect the fact, because on the report it both says it's on demand. That's a different point. So let's say it takes 2, 3, 4 weeks to get money out of the county pool. What if we flip the investment, say the 33 million in the state pool, that make us about $80,000 more interest income, and the 15 millions in the county pool. So just flip it. $15 million, that's on demand. We still have enough money to run our day-to-day operations. If we needed to withdraw. Would that be a fair assessment?
Sure, if your question is, would that be a fair assessment? Sure, yes.
Okay.
Are you asking me to do that then? Are you asking me to sell, to go to the county and take money out and put it in the state pool? Is that what you're asking me to do?
Yeah, I mean, if we still can smoothly run our city operations, and by flipping the investment pool, that can make us additional $80,000 interest income, I think that will help us.
I
I'll
would really
contact the
prefer
county
to,
pool. I will contact the
Well-
county pool then.
hang on, I wanted, before we do something like that, I would like to see something written up. And I know that that's added work, but before we go launching down that path, because number one, I think this is directing staff. And number two, I think that there might be financial consequences that we don't quite know about with this sort of request that comes from a committee and it's not coming before the entire council. So I'm not prepared to have this be done from the committee level. I think that that's improper. There needs to be full council fingerprints on this sort of decision and this move. And I think that we should probably also determine whether or not this is guiding staff, which is kind of stepping outside of our role as council members. So before we do something like that, I would like to have more details about what the impacts might be. Even if I think that this is a good idea, I'm all for getting extra money through investments, but this is not something that we need to decide right here, right now, without continued information.
Yeah, so we have been on this month after month. I mean, I have been asking this for at least 6 months, and Director Turley is also
I'm sorry, I don't understand. What have you been asking for 6 months?
for
I don't
about
understand.
foregone interest income.
So you've been asking me for 6 months to sell investments and put them into the state pool?
I'm asking about the investment heavily on the lower return investment pool.
So, okay, so I've answered this several times. I'll answer it one more time. From going forward, I would rather not take this to full council because I think that would be 100% inappropriate. We have an investment policy. If you want to direct investments in I think the investment policy would be the best place to do it. If you want to micromanage it and say, once the percentages get this far out of whack, then we need to immediately sell, an investment policy would be the best place for council to do that. Now, what happens is, as time goes on, interest rates fluctuate, right? Inflation comes, inflation goes. The state pool and the county pool have different holdings. The state pool is forced to have a much shorter holding. So sometimes the county pool gets a higher return than the state pool. Other times the state pool gets a higher return than the county pool. What we've always done is tried to, I don't know, play the long game. We play the averages so that we have money in both pools, so that at some point we understand that at some point we're going to have some in the higher and some in the lower. Now, if that's not acceptable to you, if you would like us to pay more close attention and take more time to micromanage it and move funds around much more quickly, then we can do that. I would like to update the investment policy to tell me that though. Because you haven't asked me to do that. For the last 6 months, you've asked me to explain why we have money in the county pool, and I've done that over and over, and that's what I'm doing again. At some point, the county pool return will probably be higher than the state pool again. And then we'll be moving money back and forth. So if you'd like me to do that on a shorter term basis rather than longer term, we can do that. But I would like it written in the investment policy rather than being directed to do that in a full council meeting from the dais.
All right,
So
that
that's
makes
my-
sense.
That's my answer
So
to your question.
yeah, so let's next finance committee meeting, let's review the investment policy.
I believe that's December.
There will be a short one in October. A shorter.
I thought that,
meeting.
okay, I thought that those were all eliminated due to the interest
Yeah.
of budget. Okay, thanks, Neil.
So it could be done there.
He said a short one. They
Yeah.
are supposed to be shorter in October, but there is one scheduled.
There is one
Okay.
scheduled, and they're at an hour each of the committees. To just a clarifying question on page 5 of the agenda packet for this, it indicates that both pools are demand pools. Is that something that needs to be changed in the report?
So the state pool is overnight money. That means that we can take it all out tomorrow. So that's a demand. It's a little bit different demand. I believe it's still accurate to say that Snohomish County is a demand pool, but it's not overnight money. They ask you to schedule it in advance. And so we can still demand our money back. The difference is like the ones up above, the 15 or so above are bonds. Bonds are not demand money. We hold those bonds. We would have to actually if we wanted to divest ourselves, we would have to put them back on the market and have somebody else buy them. So that's not a demand instrument.
Mhm.
Both pools are demand. It's just that one is overnight and one is longer.
Longer. Mhm.
Yeah.
And then Councilmember Payne is correct that we would not be able to initiate action from a committee. It would have to come to full council. So I think the right place to start is with the investment policy, and that could be reviewed at the next committee or even next year.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Next year would be my choice, although I've always happy to participate on this committee, but we've got a lot coming at us, and the volumes are only going to increase.
All right. We can at least visit it in October. I know
We can
how
talk offline.
I
Yeah,
know
we can sort that out.
how quickly we can turn things around. So it perhaps will have an initial visit and who knows, come back in the future. We'll see. The other question I have is I think this was asked last time as well to Director Antian, is the Fund 16 the building maintenance fund. So I still don't see much activities there. And I recall last time was just simply we're behind in building maintenance. I don't know if we have other additional information. I see Director Antian is there. Thank you.
Yes, this one has been a little bit challenging because, the first part of the year we work on setting up all the contracts to execute a lot of work. And then the second part of the year, we're trying to get that work, in place. So we won't see a lot of accrual on the first portion of the year. And the other challenge is that, we have one person that is doing a lot of this project is Tom, and he's also managing, facilities. So we actually requested a position for project management because there's a lot of projects under his belt. And it's always a trade-off, you don't have the staff to do all the work, or you don't have the money to do all the work that you planned. So it's like, you never win. But
Yeah,
we're
no.
working very hard on those
Okay.
projects.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Now we have the money, we just need skill management
Yeah,
to make it
we're
happen.
we're working
Is this
on
also, is this job order contracting?
so a lot of those are job ordering contracting, and so we're getting now a little bit better with them, and so it's
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Yep. Thank you for the update, for the information. I know you're working hard, and Mr. Tom Sullivan is working hard on maintenance, facility building. So we're appreciating your hard work. Thank you so much. So other than that, I don't have any other question that specifically related to the monthly report here. Susan, are you okay there?
I'm good. We can move along.
All right. So next item is our employee travel policy review. I'll have Council President take us through this.
Thank you, Councilmember Chen. As we look at this report, I think it'd be great for us to read through every word that's in the policy manual so that we get a full grasp of it. And maybe we could start with Councilmember Payne. Just kidding.
Holy cow. Yeah, that
We
just,
need 2 more hours.
wait a minute.
Yeah, 2 more hours.
Wait a minute.
I looked at this and I was like, wow, this is really complete. There's a lot of rules there, and it's very well thought through. And actually, I'm very impressed with the travel policy.
My quibble is with private vehicles. I think that puts the city at risk with workers' compensation laws, because we don't monitor people's driving records, we don't monitor people's insurance. I mean, so having a quick rush at this without greater discussion, I think that we have maybe some other things to talk about, but
yeah. Well, okay, so that's
so
what I was hoping. You're going exactly where I was hoping we could go. Is
use of private vehicles?
Well, no, any part of the policy that deserves further review, and then what I'd like to do is make it a future agenda item with some suggestions from staff as to how it would be most functional and useful for them. So
if I can offer a thought,
mhm.
for all of these, it does say that this was from 2017, so it's not that stale. There are all sorts of considerations, and some of them are burdens that you're putting on the employee, and sometimes they're burdens that you're putting on staff. The one about use of personal vehicles, that's a burden on staff where it's going to be HR and they're going to have to check everybody's driver's license and run it through Department of Licensing, and that's an expense as well because they don't do that for free. And then making sure that they have a clean driving record. And then what do you do if you find someone with a kind of a gnarly driving record? Do you want them driving a city vehicle? And then do we trust them to drive their own vehicle? And so there are all sorts of things. Having having spent some time working in a large safety office, we had, as a part of our safety discussions, personal vehicle was always a challenge. And you can't waive workers' compensation if you're driving your own vehicle on the job. But that was a much bigger city. It was a much bigger department. There were probably, and I'm counting roughly, probably 40 people in the Seattle City Light HR department alone. Just letting you know. So when we look at this as a can of worms to kind of look at, we need to also add the reasonableness elements there too. So, and we definitely need to have HR included in some of these discussions as well.
Point well taken. Will, do you have any areas that you would like to include in a future discussion on this?
So I was wondering what's the triggering event that prompt us to review these travel and meal expenses. For example, the investment policy is triggered by the way we invest. What is triggering us to review those well-written policy right now?
Well, one of the observations is the one that Councilmember Payne brought up. I also was looking at this for any direction or policy with regard to international travel. And I was wondering if that has been considered for this policy and whether or not it should be.
Yeah, I read through it. I don't see anything talk about international. I guess whether it's international or domestic or local, if it's work related, then it's a fair game. We should reimburse employees for work related travel and meals.
And we are an international part of the international community, being a part of the sister city organizations.
Sure. Director Turley,
go ahead.
Director Turley, would it be useful to have additional policy guidance with regard to international travel in a document like this?
So before I answer that, I need to clarify one thing, just because I want to make it very clear to everybody. The agenda memo was written very well. If I can find it here, I got off on a different screen. So it says travel policies and procedures are addressed in several documents. So we have travel policies in the personnel policy, and a travel policy, and a procurement policy, and in city code. So they were all written by different people for different purposes, and they all kind of address the same thing. But since they're written for different purposes, one thing I want to point out is that most of our policies are kind of procedural. Like, when this happens, here's how you account for it, or here's how you do it. We don't have a lot of policies on some of the basic things are kind of assumed, like Mr. Teraday said in the previous meeting, that how does something get approved for payment? Well, if the person's supervisor said they can go and approve the trip, then it's approved. I'm not sure if that's so basic that I'm not sure we have it spelled out that way, because that's kind of a basic. So we could add some things like that. I'll say this to get back to your question. I've worked in other places where, for example, in 2008 during the recession, as I recall, King County put a moratorium for a couple of years on out-of-state travel. So we were still allowed to go to conferences and get training and everything, but in an effort to try to trim the travel costs, they said we're not going to approve any out-of-state travel for a year or two. So after a couple of years, they lifted that. Thing to point out, though, is that was an administrative action at that time. Council certainly can write things like that into policy if you want to. Oftentimes those come from the administration. So I'm just trying to give like the big complete picture.
Mhm.
So a lot of that stuff we don't have written in policy. We certainly could add it either on the administration side or coming from council, either one.
Would it be
And-
beneficial to have some additional guidance in that area? For example, whether it's international travel, or whether it's let's say the extent to which we send, let's say, numerous staff or numerous council members to events. Is there any part of that would be helpful for policy? So for example, with the council budget, if we have meetings that we're sending council members to, we have a limited amount of travel funds for events, and so we usually limit the number of council members who can go to any one particular event, or if the budget is spent in a particular area, then we're done traveling.
Right, I remember we were gonna go to
Right.
the AWC meeting and we ran out of money, so we couldn't go.
Right.
So
Well-
let me answer your question this way. The entire purpose, not the entire purpose, one of the main purposes and one of the main benefits of writing policy is that the policy outlives the people, right? So you put in a good policy and the entire council can turn over, the entire administration can turn over, and the policy is still in place. So that's good and bad. It's good if you've set good guide rails and good barriers to ensure good future performance. That's really good. Here's where it gets tough is every year, or maybe not every year, 8 years out of 10, we get a new council president. And every council president wants to do things a different way. And so it's good if you want to establish a policy that the next council president will have to follow. That next council president might not like the policy that you put in place. So it works, it cuts both ways. Yeah.
Right. And I
Okay.
would add, and I would like to add, because I think one of the policies where I had a really strong objection to, but I got outvoted a couple of years ago, is that, and to Dave's point, is that, you know, I believe that council is a separate branch of government. And so with council presidents turning over every year or so, which is fair. I mean, I don't have any quibble about that. Council travel guidelines and council's travel policy should be its own separate beast, and we should not be included in administration policy, and we are in some of these. So that's just, I would clean that part up. So
Okay, I see Councilmember Olson's hands up.
Thank you. You know, there were, like you said, there were multiple policies in here, and what I find interesting when we're dealing with policies is that, to me, when I read them, like, I interpret them a certain way, but then when push comes to shove and there's some situation where you know, there's an objection in the public that something was done a certain way, you know, it's like, oh, well, the policy isn't really straightforward, or, you know, you can't definitively say that the policy doesn't allow that. So it makes it hard because you want it to be broad, you know, so that it fits every situation. But on the flip side, it should be clear enough that that authorizing entity is constrained by what's there. And I'll give you the specific examples on page 55, which was packet page 41, travel and meal expenses. That was in the chapter 9 document. It says it's the city's policy to pay for reasonable and necessary expenses related to authorized city business. On page 43, it talks about, you know, reasonable and prudent, blah, 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 and directly relate to the conduct of city business or service. On packet page 46, for reasonable expenses incurred conducting city business, providing the expenses are prudent and directly related to the individual's service on behalf of the city. So, you know, that the more
Connection is not too well.
You,
You
Oh.
freeze there for a minute.
I think I just put my packet down on the keyboard and it muted me. So, you know, when there was an issue where a member of the public was aware that there was a staff member who was reimbursed for the travel on Sister City, and then you look at these policies, and to me, it seems like a real stretch to have reimbursed that from city funds. So where, yeah, I guess there's, you know, wiggle room when push comes to shove, maybe a policy wasn't broken, and yet I wouldn't have authorized that, having read that same policy. So it's just really difficult. Policy is difficult.
Yeah, so looks like the key here is the authorizer. So the policy gives the power of the authorizer to authorize reasonable and necessary expenses. So that's kind of a judgment call on the approver.
Yeah,
If the
exactly.
approver think that certain expenses, certain travel, in this case, go to Japan, is on a team representing the city, it's kind of a gray line, gray area.
Right. And some travel is going to be, you know, where you're getting professional qualifications, continuing education. And these are things that our professionals in the city do need to keep updated as well. And so there's you know, there's a level of trust that has to be going on, and I think that that's a part of it as well. So if there are edits, I'm very eager to look at them. I think that it's, you know, that we'll need to make sure that we understand how this will impact people's training and qualifications and maintenance of their professional licenses, or you know, CPAs and the following.
Yeah, I am aware that in this upcoming budget season that we're looking at, you know, maybe needing to tighten our belts. So among the things that could be getting discussed would just be, you know, for example, anything that's out of state, you know, needs to get approved by some, you know, panel, whether that's council or the finance committee or whatever else, in addition to the normal channels. Might be
that, well, yeah. So it'll be interesting to see if that comes up at that level.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, another thought is to put a dollar limit. Like Council President mentioned earlier, the council office has a dollar cap.
A dollar limit, right?
Yeah, that way will limit the amount of damage that the taxpayer is responsible for. So that's another consideration.
and that would be in our budget deliberations. So Director Turley, just it sounds like we're getting into where this would go with the personnel committee as opposed to the finance consideration. Would that be your estimation as well?
So Councilmember Olson's example was very on point because she quoted from 3 different policies, one written by Human Resources, one written by Finance, and one written predominantly by Public Works. And so that's the reason the language is different. Now, in a perfect world, we would update all of these policies so that the language was very consistent between all of the policies. That hasn't happened. So to ask, is this a better thing for human resources? Well, one of them is.
Okay.
One of them really lives in finance. One of them really lives with. Now that Kim is here, one of the things she's actually working on is updating the procurement policy, which includes some of this language. And to do that, she'll be working with basically every department. On the finance side, I'm not sure I would, because the things we put in the finance policy are more making sure we're in compliance with audit regulations, for example, you know. And the opinion of what you were talking about earlier, should there be a dollar limit? Should it go to council for approval? Should there be, you know, that's kind of a higher level. I have my opinions, but I think that's going to be like, well, everybody has an opinion, so that's a different topic, I think.
Well, the reason I wanted to bring this forward was to have this discussion and to create some greater awareness around for example, the three different ways that travel is expressed, and then also to ask the question of if there's anything that we would want to look at most likely in 2024. And for the most part, I think it is an administrative function to make approvals or to decide what travel is justifiable. So I don't want to get too prescriptive, and it certainly isn't something that I want to see come back to council every time somebody wants to go
For training.
Go for training somewhere. Exactly. But I did want to ask the question as to what would be useful, and you've given me some good guidance there, so I appreciate that.
So what would you like to do in terms of future amendments?
Well, you know what I would like to do is bring this back for a council discussion as to the most appropriate places for this to be discussed. And I do see that some of it should be done, at the finance committee. I think some of it needs to be done in the personnel committee, and then as Councilmember Payne mentioned, this is a fairly fresh policy. It's not like it's goes back to 1960 or something like that. And it is very extensive. There's some very well outlined rules here. And I just want to make sure that we are both following the rules and that staff is aware of what the policies are that relate to their particular department. So that's the main reason that I wanted to bring it forward for this meeting today.
Okay.
So, yeah, thank you.
That's a good discussion. Thank you so much. Anything else? Other question, comments? If not, we'll move
Nope.
to the next item, 2.4, which is the mid-year review. And for this particular item, I think it was triggered by the reserve, the general fund reserve policy that has requirement that we provide in August a review of the general fund reserve and the contingency fund reserve status update. And so far we have not get the update. So I want to give credits to Council President Tibbet for having this idea of compiling a key scoreboard, a key dashboard, just highlight a few key numbers on the biennium basis, so that the council, the public knows the general situation of the city in terms of revenue, expenses, where's our reserve, and in this year, I put APA.
Okay.
Who is?
That's Scott, who's,
Oh, Scott.
he's got to put his, Scott, you should put yourself on mute.
We're hearing your echo. Okay. Hey, Scott, can you hear this?
I'm sorry about that.
Scott, okay, looks like you put yourself on mute already. So let me continue this year, because we still have the America Rescue playing act money, the APA monies. We still have some fund there, so I thought it would be beneficial for us to know how much APA fund we have left and what's our plan with those fund for the remaining of the time. Since there's limitations on when we need to commit those funds and when we need to spend those funds. And then I was thinking at the high level, we know our revenue, we know our expenses. What about our assets, and what kind of liability does the city have? So that's how this dashboard come about. And Council President Tibby and I sit together and pull some number, mostly out of the monthly report that was provided by Director Turley to populate this dashboard. And I realized this dashboard, there are some missing field, there are some area that's pending. So the purpose of today's discussion is to see if this tool is number one, useful or not, and number two, is some of those key numbers, since it's required by policy, like the current reserve level that's pending, see if as a committee we can kind of make sense out of it. Since right now is kind of a critical time in terms of we're spending into the reserve layer. With that, I'm just going to walk through those numbers unless Councilmember Peng and other members have some high-level comments before we go through that.
My understanding of the reserve is that it's established once a year, and it doesn't bobble around. And then so this fund reserve requirement was set at our budget time last year. Is that correct, Director Turley?
That's how I understand the policy, yes,
Yeah,
the
it's
reserve
done.
is analyzed as part of the adopted budget.
Right. All right.
I'd like to make a
That's-
comment first.
Okay.
I tried to be polite and wait until you were done. So, Councilmember Chen, words matter. What you say in these meetings is important and it matters. You opened this discussion by saying that we have a report that's required in August and it has not been given. And I take strong exception to that. We have provided that information, and I don't appreciate you saying in a committee meeting, in a video that will go in minutes, that will be forever in posterity, saying that I am violating the policy and that I'm not providing adequate reporting.
Well, maybe you have given, but I have participated in all the meetings, and I have no knowledge that that report has been given.
So I need to know what you want. I've asked this before. If you want a fund balance report, you need to tell me what you want in the fund balance report, because I've given you all the information I can think of that would go in a fund balance report.
So
You can't hold me responsible for something if you haven't asked me for specific information. You can't tell me that I didn't give it to you.
So I have to navigate. Let me go to give me a second. I'm gonna navigate to the reserve policy. Let's see.
Will, while you're doing that, maybe you want to navigate to it without sharing your screen.
Right,
And
we're
while
looking
you-
at your personal travel things.
And while
Oh, let's see. Okay, so actually this item, the monthly report was initially communicated by Council President to Director Turley. So that direct communication did not come from me because all the agenda setting was done between Council President on behalf of the Council. So I'm not directly involved in the agenda setting. So Council President, do you have any comment in terms of
yes,
the
I was
agenda
waiting.
setting?
Yeah, I was waiting for that. Yes, and I've said this before. I apologize for not being really clear about what I was looking for in a mid-year budget review, and this is something that obviously we need to clean up as far as if we're going to be getting, as per our policy, we're going to be getting the information that we expect at the mid-year. And I obviously neglected to articulate and be clear enough as to what I was looking for. But in what I was hoping for at the mid-year review was not information that would be provided in the June report, but a consolidated overview of what we saw in city action between January and June. And Councilmember Chen and I were able to compile information. By the way, I could share my screen showing what's in the budget review. Maybe I should just do that. Are you?
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you're able to see that. And by the way, this is in your packet as well. But
Right, I have the packet up.
yeah. So and you're able to see this part of the report.
Yeah, that's clear.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So we had to get this number here that's highlighted in yellow, we had to go through 3 pages of the June report to come up with this number. And that's why I'm hoping that we can create a template that can be populated at the, for the August mid-year report. And then this gives us an overview of these different pieces. We came down here, we had to do the math to come up with this number. And again, we're highlighting that. We're looking for, with regard to bonding, we know that these are the bond amounts that we have. We'd like to know how much we've paid towards them and what our future obligations are. And so these are just like basic mid-year numbers that I think could be provided in a summary fashion. But again, I apologize for not asking for it in this particular kind of a printout. We can, this particular number with regard to the current reserve level, we can extrapolate that as well. We go, what the start of the general fund balance was in January 1. We look at the fund balance on June 30th. We subtract one from the other, and we know what the difference is, and then we can extrapolate, whether or not we have enough left to cover this reserve amount. And my understanding, and Director Turley, I think, has done an excellent job of describing how the reserves are go up and down throughout the course of the year, and that's exactly what you would anticipate when it comes to managing a city's budget. And then when it comes to the budget for the coming year, there's always that reconciliation between the fund balance and the reserve policy, and we have a new number once we have the approved budget. And so the approved budget gives us another what the reserve requirement is, and we have a policy, or we have direction from our policy to actually come up with how we're going to fund that reserve. So we can come up with this, but I was hoping that it would be provided for us. And so one thing that would be helpful for me to know from Director Turley is what would be useful for future reporting at the mid-year from your perspective. What do you need to know from the council in order to have let's say, to provide the kind of summary that doesn't require that we pull numbers from different parts of let's say the June report or different parts of the reports throughout the year? What's useful?
Yeah, so the schedule that you put together here, we'd be happy to put this information together in a format like this or very similar to this, so that you don't have to look at page 10 and then page 20 if that's what you had to do. That's no problem at all. That wouldn't take very long, because like I say, all this information is out there in this report. Now the debt information at the bottom, that's all in our annual report, and so we can kind of copy and paste that and put into a monthly report if you'd like. The majority of our obligations are debt. We make 2 payments a year. If we have bonds outstanding, we make a payment in June and December, so the numbers don't really change. And we update those once a year for our annual report. But we can certainly give you a breakdown of, what you call here future obligations. That's no problem at all. So we can put this so what I'm saying is we can put this report together exactly how you have it, and I appreciate you doing that. And then we'll give that back to you. And if that's what you want, or if that answers your questions, then great. If you want to tweak it a little bit more, we can tweak it from there.
Well, I'd be glad to work with you on tweaking that. And like I said, I think this is the kind of overview that helps us in the middle of the year to put all the pieces together from various different places into one overview.
Sure. Yeah,
So,
we can put this together, no problem.
Okay.
That's great. Yeah, so in particular, this current reserve level, we have pending right here. And let me go back to Council President, can you answer, and I will share the reserve policy just to clarify my comments earlier about I have not seen this report. So hopefully this is the right screen. Let's see. Can you guys see the policy screen?
Yes.
Okay. So let me minimize the Zoom screen. So in Article 5, it clearly stated in the general fund reserve policy that once a year in August, the city finance directors will present to the council finance committee a comprehensive report on the city's fund balance reserve types as of June 30th. The report shall include an updated fund balance reserve level for each fund balance type. This report shall include the following funds. Number one is the general fund operating reserve balance, which is the 16% part. And number two is the contingent reserve fund balance, which is the 4% part. So that's my comment is referring to this requirement, and I don't recall I have seen that comprehensive report.
So if you look on pages 33 to 35, I believe. Okay, packet page, just to not have confusion. Packet page 37 to 39, that gives a operating reserve fund balance report for every fund in the entire city. Okay, so
Okay, I'm sorry, which page is that?
well, packet page 37 has the general fund.
Okay, yeah, and this is the July report, so
Right.
yeah.
So
So
we
just for
include fund
example.
balance reserves for every single fund in the city for you.
So
So-
the
so that's
general
us-
fund balance is 5,000,000
5 million.
51. And
So
then
that yeah, go ahead.
would we add the two numbers together, the 5.5 million and the 3 million together to get the total fund balance?
No, the 5 is the fund balance, the 3 million is a cash balance, so there are different numbers. In several of the funds, it's the same number. But in an active fund like the general fund, where there's continually cash coming in and out, and there's also some assets in the fund, then the fund balance and the cash balance are not the same.
Mhm. So right here is the contingency reserve on line 12. So that's reported right there.
But yeah, fund 12 is the contingency reserve fund.
Right. And then if we were to look for the regular reserve, we could subtract the 5.5 million from the 8.9 million and get an over under for that reserve. Is that correct?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
As compared to the 16% requirement, yeah.
Yeah. So so if we could report that, and what I was looking for at the mid-year was that over under. And I'd like that on a dashboard.
Right. So
So we can do that, sure.
yeah, so clearly, not that we are panic or anything. Like Council President pointed out earlier, funds goes up and down, and right now we're just knowing that the general fund we have 5.5 million, which is below the 8.9 million required 16% reserve level. So looking ahead, I mean the property tax is coming in, so it's gonna give us a boost. But it's this kind of awareness that the council and the management, for that perspective, we all need to be aware where we are at and how we're gonna manage it, so that we can ensure that our city will operate normally with sufficient funding. So that's the whole purpose.
So I don't entirely agree. I do agree it's our responsibility to provide financial reporting to show you where we're at. But in June and July and August, we're not going to do forecasts and tell you plans for the future. That's not appropriate. It just isn't done.
Yeah, and I agree. You know what? I agree with that as well. And the obvious thing is, it's just a number, and it helps us to understand where we're at a point in time, and realizing that at another point in time, when you're preparing for the next year's budget, that's the time when you do detailed analysis. That's when you do detailed work on the projections. That's when you look at sources of revenue and potential other new sources of revenue to bring us back in line with the policy. And I understand that we don't do that, let's say 3 times during the course of the year. It happens once a year when we're preparing the next year's budget. And all we're asking for is what format is useful for the finance department to let us know at a point in time what that number is. And like I said, it's just a number that helps us to understand.
Yeah. So if the format you provided is something you like, we'll be very happy to put it together in that format for you.
Okay. Director Turley, is there anything else that you think should be on that form or would be useful to the council in a mid-year summary?
So I'll say this: it's hard to answer that because we give you 39 pages of financial information. So maybe we're actually giving you too much. I don't know, because everything you're asking for is there, but maybe because we're giving you 39 pages, it's hard to find or something.
Well, and that's what I'm saying is, with a mid-year dashboard, I kind of like the word dashboard.
Sure.
What I want is the key data in one place. When we had to go to 3 different pages to get numbers for one category, it makes me realize how much work would go into each of the categories just to come up with, the dashboard.
Yeah. So now that we know what you want, we'll be happy to give it to you.
Okay.
In the way you asked for it.
Thank you. And I apologize for not having this discussion like 3 months ago.
Yeah, so I agree that the fund goes ups and down. We have revenue coming in at different times. But I think our purpose is the same, is to ensure that our city will operate smoothly. And in terms of the fund reserve requirement, it says in August a comprehensive report on both fund, the regular contingency 16% and the 4%. You point out the 2 numbers there, which is great. I saw that. But when I read the reserve policy and the requirements, I was thinking about policy comparing requirement to current to outlook, kind of a comprehensive report. That's what I'm getting at.
Well, you're not going to get the outlook. I'll say it once again. We'll give you current and we'll give you past, but I'm not going to include an outlook in a mid-year report. So I'm sorry, I apologize, but it's just not appropriate.
So maybe the understanding of comprehensive is quite different understanding.
Everything that goes into the fund balance that you're looking for is in 39 pages that we put together for you every month. I would call a 39-page report pretty darn comprehensive. And there's nothing, if I could go to council next Tuesday and give you a comprehensive report, and I could talk for 30 minutes on it, but it's not gonna have any information that's not in those 39 pages. You're getting comprehensive financial reporting, including all the information that makes up the fund balances and where it came from. You have it year to date, you have it compared to last year, you have it compared to budget. We slice and dice it every way we can for 39 pages.
Yeah,
And I think that,
go ahead.
if I may offer, we did say that we would take a look at the reserve balance policy. We said that probably 2 months ago. So maybe we need to add that to our policy list. We've got this trifecta. We'll do employee travel, reserve balance, and then what was the other one?
Investment
The investment
policy.
policy, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
That's where I was
Yeah,
getting
the
it.
fund-
So
Like we said,
Yeah,
the fund balance
Yeah,
policy
we-
itself says that it should be reviewed every 5 years, and it was adopted in 2019. So 2024 is the exact appropriate time to go through it again.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I'm thinking.
So we will update the dashboard that we provided in the packet. We'll just add the pending number, which is the reserve level. That'll be the fund balance minus the reserve, and then that gives us the over under, and that's what we'll report there. We'll report that the contingency reserve is completely intact the way we expect. And in terms of future obligations, that's something that will be covered at the end of the year. So we'll
Sounds good.
update, yeah, we'll update that and put it in the packet for filing.
Yeah, like I say, I think our purpose is the same. It's just our approach might be from different angle. So this little dashboard is gonna help the council and also help the public to see, for example, in July, we have gone below the $8.9 million reserve requirements, knowing that we have revenues that's coming in, but it's something that we need to be aware of. All right, so that's all I
Right.
have for that particular item. Any other discussion on that?
No, we have 2 minutes before our next meeting begins.
All right. With that, I'll adjourn the meeting and I'll see you at the 7 o'clock special meeting.
Thank you.
Great. Thank